Welcome to the Gird Up Podcast. My name is Charlie Ungemach. I'm the founder and curator of the Gird Up Project, and we've got an interview today we'll get to in just a second. But before we do that, we'd like to invite you to help support the work that we're doing here at Gird Up as we fill the internet with confessional content and help prepare the people of God for whatever lies ahead. You can do so by buying us a cup of coffee. We call it a cup of coffee donation because for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help support the ministry we're doing here. And if you'd like to either suggest conversations or help fund the conversations that we are having, you can go to www.girdupministries.com, select buy us a cup of coffee in the main menu, and make your donation there. Thank you to those of you who have done so already. God has blessed us richly through your gifts. We were just talking before we started about some of the new equipment and things that we've got, and that's all due to you guys. So thank you very much for your support. Our guest today is Miss Ashley Fritz. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you also. I'm excited to have you on. It's been one of my desires for a while to have more women on the podcast. We've had some wonderful motherly figures over the years, but I think it's also important and valuable to get the perspectives and hear the voice of younger women among us as well. So thank you for being willing to be one of those voices and come on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So you're down in North Carolina, but you're up in Wisconsin at the moment. We're recording at the Wisconsin Lutheran Chapel in Madison. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, what you do, so forth.
Yeah, so I actually grew up here in Madison, Wisconsin, and then attended the University of Wisconsin and got my bachelor's in landscape architecture. And now I work down in Raleigh, North Carolina in landscape architecture. Grew up in an awesome Christian family, had Christian schooling my whole life, and was also blessed with musical talents and interests, and kind of wanted to pursue that as a degree possibly at one point, but it just doesn't always seem practical necessarily for a profession. And but I was always involved in church music and whatnot. And actually here I went to the Wisconsin Lutheran Chapel all through college and loved helping with worship and music and whatnot. And when I moved to Raleigh, a position opened at my church. Well, it was more like an opening happened and they were like, hey, you do music, can you be our worship coordinator? And I was like, am I qualified? Just kidding. But I'm like, hey, the passion is there. And so yeah, it's been a learning experience, but I've definitely enjoyed it a lot. So I'm now the worship coordinator down at Refuge Church in Raleigh. And I do that as well as being a landscape analyst for the company I work down there.
Awesome. And you mentioned growing up in a wonderful, you said wonderful or lovely Christian family. Yeah. What do you mean when you say that? What's that family look like?
I mean, your typical like, oh, we go to church every Sunday, and then obviously putting us through Christian schooling as well. But it was also like part of our daily lives as a family. Pray before bed every night, and parents have a strong devotional, like personal devotional life that I just saw growing up. And I think for children, a big thing, and you probably don't notice it until you're older, but it's like observation, you like children mimic. So seeing them do that it just became natural for us to start doing that on our own. And then usually at dinner, we would also do like family devotion, and especially now that we're older, we'd like just discuss different topics a lot and pray for each other. And parents were both active in Bible studies and the church. And yeah, and I think it was very important that both parents were equally invested in it. And that's kind of what I meant by that, I guess.
Yeah. Are your parents aren't in ministry?
No.
No. What do they do?
My dad is a instructor at Madison College, so it's the community college in Madison, and he works in. Well, he's I don't know his actual title, but he's in the Department of Kinesiology, and I think he's the department chair. So a lot of what he does is administrative, but he also teaches some classes. He always tells me his degrees and I can't remember, but it's something in like kinesiology related physical education. So very active guy, very smart and passionate about health and wellness, which I also have. And then my mom got her bachelor's in marketing and management at the University of Wisconsin here. So I followed her footsteps, go Badgers. And she studied as a piano as a non-music major. So now she's a piano teacher, actually. So she took her business background to create her own studio in a way, and she just adores kids. So she teaches now at 2 grade schools and has her own home studio and teaches piano.
And I imagine that at least some of your love for music then comes from your mother.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I play piano and saxophone among other things,
Saxophone.
but my mom also plays piano and saxophone.
Of course, you're a saxophone player.
Yes.
All right. So as far as your involvement in church personally, there are a lot of kids who grow up in homes where it is an important part of their lives and yet still aren't as involved when they leave home. What do you think it is that drove you to stay involved? I mean, you were even here at Madison, very involved in church all the way through college. Why do you think that was true for you when it's not true for so many others?
I think there comes a point in everyone's lives where when you leave the nest and you need to make your faith your own. And I'm not exactly sure what makes people realize the importance of it and what doesn't. I mean, it's kind of, and looking back, I'm like, I don't even know what the thing was that really made it click, but I know I noticed in myself a big turning point when I actually came to Madison. So I went to Wisconsin Lutheran College for my first year of school.
Okay.
And when I decided I wanted to pursue landscape architecture, it's a highly accredited program. So I had to go to a school that had it, which my only option really was the University of Wisconsin. So when I came here, I didn't know anybody, and I was very aware that it's a very secular school, and it was the first time I wasn't going to be in a Christian classroom. So I think, praise God, at some point I just was like, I need to actually put in an effort here and kind of make this my own thing and go to church regularly. And I think part of it too was just habit. It's something I'd been doing on Sundays, every day or every week for my entire life. So I just kind of did it. And then after that, I was then started making it part of more of my daily life. And then a big thing too is my roommates at Madison were actually, one of them, my first year, was a Christian, not Lutheran or Wells or anything like that, but she was super passionate about it and just loved discussing the Bible and stuff. So that was also, it was really fun to be in a living environment with someone your own age who was so passionate about it and who didn't have that necessarily Christian schooling background. And it was the first time I was exposed to someone who wasn't Wells or Lutheran. And
there are other Christians out there?
I was like, whoa, you love Jesus so much, And I think that was a big part of it, honestly. It was just having that, I'd come home and I would sit down to eat my dinner and my roommate would be cooking and we'd be like, all right, we're just going to start discussing something you read in Philippians or whatever. It was just so random, but I think that was probably a big part of it. And then another big part of it too was she knew the Bible so well, better than anyone I knew my age who wasn't in ministry. And she would ask doctrinal things and I'd have to really be okay, wait, I actually need to know why I believe what I believe. It's not just because someone's telling me this is the way it is, which is I think how everyone should be. You should never just believe something because that's what your pastor is telling you. And so then that made me actually dig in and find the biblical evidence for different things too. And then a big part of faith was just not somehow, but I found my way to chapel. I knew about it and the building was really cool and they have great events going on. So I got plugged into that pretty early. And a big part too was coming in, as a transfer, you don't live in the dorms. So I didn't, and that's how most people make their friends. And so I didn't know anybody. And so I was like, well, there's got to be people at chapel. I'm got to make my friends, and yeah, now literally my best friends are people I made here. They're I definitely just sought out avenues to continue growing in my faith. I don't know necessarily what that click was that flipped the brain switch, because I know a lot of people that doesn't happen. And I think it is just everyone's life events are different, and some events and people you experience too, really. I mean, some people are going to point you to God. Some people are going to try to point you to him and then end up pointing you away. And Others, you might just get swept up in worldly things, and it just kind of depends on the person and situation.
Is that something you kind of knew coming in, or is that something you had to learn along the way, do you think?
I think I knew probably a little bit of both. I mean, you hear about Madison, oh, the scary, big, like secular university. And especially having the roommates that I did coming in, they were random. We got an apartment together. Well, I found them on Facebook, and they were on the track team. And I was like, athletes, like, we'll get along because I did sports for my whole life. And I didn't know any of them were Christian, but I was like living in this like athlete environment. They're usually known for being, I don't know, just a little more not focused necessarily on school and that kind of thing. But I was like, I think that kind of made me prepared to be like, okay, like I might have these experiences. How am I gonna prepare myself to handle them? But then at the same time, it was like, you don't really know what you're getting into until you're there. And it was honestly, I think, better than I thought it was gonna be. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful to hear. Let's talk about the environment here at Madison a little bit. You mentioned it's a big secular university. Locals, we all know the reputation, right? Can you just talk to that a little bit? What, like, I guess coming in, what was your impression before you got here? What proved to be true about the institution? And I'm not trying to lead you because I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Here.
I think there's like two different ways you can there's two different reputations and ways you can go about it. Then it's one of the biggest party schools in the country. And then also it's in your curriculum, they're gonna force, like if you've ever seen the movie God's Not Dead, it's like the professor just like shoving it down their throat. But like kind of that is like in class, your professor is just gonna tell you that being a Christian is dumb, and that like almost like baked into the curriculum is gonna be this like anti religion type thing. And I would say both are true in some regards. Definitely, it depends for the school side of things what major you're pursuing. Like the science-based ones are gonna have a lot more of that into it, where or even the more artsy type things are gonna have a lot of the more political, social issues baked into those. And I did experience both. And I would say the worst parts were in the general education requirements. Those classes were probably the ones that had more of the like indoctrination, for lack of better terms, but like kind of where they're going to feed you that stuff. But like I was prepared for that. In those classes, you have like 200 people in a lecture, like it's being spoken to you, but it's no one like coming up and confronting you, and like you don't even have an opportunity to speak usually in those classes. Whereas then when you get into your major classes, my major was very small. There was 12 of us, I think, in our graduating class, and I mean those classes, like we weren't talking about like religion or evolution or like anything like that. We were talking about like planting design and how to mass shrubs with trees, that kind of stuff. So it just really depended for, I think schooling, it depends a lot more. A lot of my friends and people who attend the chapel are usually engineering majors or med students. And I think or like pre-med. And I think pre-med, you get a little bit more of that because you have to take more biology classes and that kind of stuff. But then going back to like the party side of things, it's 100% true. I mean, but I think it's also any university. Like I'm gonna even go out to say Christian universities, like it's everywhere. It's a young person thing, and it's just what's become a societal norm, no matter where you are or how old you are or what you believe. It's a lot easier, I would say, to get into here because it's not as regulated I mean, most people, don't live in dorms, so it can't be as regulated once you get out of your freshman year. And then we have these massive frats, which actually are literally the building over. And so I think I'm glad I didn't go here my freshman year because that I know is a big pressure in the freshman dorms is like everybody every Friday and Saturday, actually Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they all pack up and go to the frats and all that kind of thing. So I never felt pressured into doing that because by the time I got here, like my roommates were like 2 years older than me and they were like past that. So it's kind of nice. But like, it's just like the pre-football game culture. There's like the big block parties that happen like every single year on the same day. So it is everywhere and it's talked about everywhere. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's just a very prevalent thing. But like, it's definitely who you surround yourself with too. Because, yeah, I never really felt those like pressures to go to those types of like parties and stuff because it wasn't really the people I was surrounding myself with, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, it's definitely a true thing.
When you talk about partying, like what
Mhm.
specifically are you talking about? Because you can define it different ways, I guess.
Okay.
What do you,
Just drinking a ton, getting absolutely plastered, multiple days a week.
Wisconsin?
Yeah. Yeah, I like yeah, pretty much like everyone's weekend plans involve just getting drunk. Like that's pretty much what it is here. And it's like, and I'm sure like there's drugs that go on too. I never experienced or saw people doing it and stuff, but like, and it's definitely not as prevalent of a thing. Yeah, I don't even know if I ever like saw it honestly, but it's yeah, there's just this the drinking culture, and it's like almost everything you do out like socially or outside of class, that's probably going to be involved in some way.
Okay. And I assume you do partake in alcohol from time to
Hmm.
time, right?
Yeah, I'm a big beer girl.
Yeah, there you go. There we go.
Moving to North Carolina, you really appreciate spotted cows.
Okay.
You
All
come
right.
back.
Have you been to the big, what's the big Sierra Nevada?
Oh, in Asheville?
Yeah,
I have not. I think I've driven by
it
it.
is fantastic. And they always have like live music and things like that going on too. It's something you got to see.
Okay.
Something you got to
I'll have
see for
to
sure.
get back out there at some point.
Yeah, and it's beautiful out there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the way I have described it is if anybody's ever been to Shells out in Minnesota, I was a tour guide at Shells for a couple of years, so it's got a special place in my heart. But the places like that with all the history are cool and beautiful and so forth. And then you have the places that are hip and upcoming, and when you have something that kind of meets it both in the middle, it's a special thing, and that's the way I felt about the Sierra Nevada. I don't even know what to call it, complex out in
Yeah.
Nashville.
Just
So
brewery? I don't know.
yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a big tap house and everything, and they also are brewing all the beer and all that
Okay.
kind of stuff, and it's in the
Yeah, I know
woods.
it's massive.
It's
Oh, I
gorgeous.
think they even have like trail network in
I
there
think they do.
behind there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I've
awesome.
heard about that.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, a beer girl, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you've been drinking lots of spotted cow while you've been back, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was on tap at the wedding, so I was
There you
like,
go.
made sure to get one of
There you
those.
go. There you go. You said when you got here, you felt that you were pretty well prepared for the pressures and I guess and temptations that you faced.
Mhm.
What was it that prepared you for that, do you think? And what do
Yeah.
you mean when you say prepared?
I think like mentally prepared, a big thing if you know what you're getting into. I think being taken off guard is something I just don't like to happen. So I usually mentally prepare myself for whatever I think I'm going to experience. Obviously, you can't prepare for everything. And then another thing is like, okay, you're like, if this is going to happen, what can I do or who can I talk to have like that community of people who will support you. So I know definitely coming in, whenever I'd experience something that was new or something I was unsure of, like I was at chapel at least 3 days a week and I'd see Pastor Billets every single time. And I kind of in the back of my mind would be like, okay, you did want to ask him about this one thing. And he would be great just on the spot being like, yep, this is the answer, or whatever. And this is how you can handle that, which is great. And then my brother is also studying to be a pastor, so he's always on deck for more like the doctrinal questions I might have. I'm like, hey, have you come across this yet, or do you know why? And my biggest thing with any of those types of questions, like more doctrinal, would be like, okay, thank you for your answer, but like, what are the biblical references? Which is, and he always has them, which is great. But then also just, I think being prepared of like having Christian friends too is a big thing. And sometimes I was blessed where like there were plenty of people my age who I met who were Christians and we had similar interests and we got along. But like you can't really be friends with someone just because they're a Christian, Like you need to have similar interests to do things and click and I don't, whatever. Like, yeah, you can't just like be like, all right, we're gonna be friends because we just sit by each other in church. So I, again, was just blessed with who ended up being around when I was around. But then also, like, I think I was going to Madison. I remember like going in, I was very prepared to be like, I'm going to school to go to school. I like honestly don't think I thought I was going to make friends in my classes. I was like, I don't want to be friends with these people because there was stereotype. And so I was like, I'm going to be very okay just seeing my friends I've made in the past on the weekends or on break. And I'll just study a lot and fill my time doing whatever else. And thank God that wasn't the case because I'm very social and it was awesome to interact with people here at chapel. And then I also became very good friends with people in my classes who have no faith life or have very limited experience. And that is truly what it like made, I don't know, that's changed my perspective a lot on like evangelism, I guess, and outreach, because literally, like, I lived here at the chapel, and a big question at the beginning of every school year is, oh, where are you living? And it was so easy. I would be like, Wisconsin Lutheran Chapel, and they're like, you live in a church? Like, what? Like, how does that work? And then you just explain it, and it literally opens the door, and a lot of people would end up being like, I haven't been to church since I was a kid, or like, what kind of church do you go to? And like, it literally just opened the door to questions, and people are just curious. Like, you think people are gonna start attacking you or then not want to be your friend or something. And no, more people are just curious. I think it's so important. Like, it can be scary to go to a place where you're not, especially after growing up in a grade school and high school, where you're surrounded by loving Christian teachers and families and friends, and then all of a sudden being like, okay, you were surrounded, and now there's gonna be like one. It can be very intimidating. But then you realize, like, oh no, this is, as long as my roots are strong, as long as I'm planted and being fed, I can go out and branch out and reach these people. And that's how we're actually going to reach people. Is, I mean, everyone in ministry is awesome and great, but you're surrounded by other Christians most of the time. It's the people who are in like the workforce or in the different other universities who are going to reach all the people who need to hear the word. And that's why it was really cool to be a part of chapel, because we had this community here where we would meet and hang out, but then also we were all out in our respective areas meeting and talking to other people. And then you really start to understand why people act the way they act, instead of just maybe judging them from the outside, being like, oh, they're sinful people who don't believe in Jesus and they never will. They're usually just waiting for someone to tell them why, you know? I didn't really have any like big like conversations necessarily with people, but they just really were curious. And some people would, yeah, then come to chapel, and maybe they'd only come once, but they came and they heard the word. And I mean, that could plant the seed for later down the road and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because frankly, I think this is the opposite of the perspective most people have. I think particularly with regard to those who are living a pretty actively sinful lifestyle, right? Is that they don't want to hear what I have to say and they're going to hate me for it. And you're saying that wasn't necessarily true?
And I think it's a big way you approach it, right? Like, if I mean, I live in the South now, and so there's definitely the fire and brimstone Christian culture down there in some points. So there's a street in Raleigh where so NC State is in Raleigh, and so they're like College Bar Street is like, there's pretty much one street that has all these bars on it. And like, you'll see people, I don't know if they're pastors or who they are, with megaphones, literally like screaming, repent and stuff. And I'm like, it just like makes me cringe so hard every time, because I'm like, you are the reason that people have
You're not out
this
there with them like that?
reputation. And I think that's the thing that makes people then like, get mad at Christians or whatever. But like, if you're just like friends with them and treat them lovingly and well, like, they're gonna come to you with questions. And like you said, you always lead with the gospel, and then the law will follow. You can't scream at somebody and expect them to want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I've been working with the LDS population over the last. Actually, did you see there were two missionaries walking down the street when I got here? Were they still here when they're probably talking to somebody? But yeah, there are two LDS missionaries walking down the street when I got here, and if I'd been on time, I would have stopped and talked to him a little bit. That's the biggest, I think, the biggest moment for me over the course of the year I've been working with LDS folks is there's one guy that was just being like abusive and just indigent and all the other, yeah, just all of it, right? And for some reason, I just didn't want to stop, because I can stop the conversation whenever I want. Like, I'm in charge of the Facebook page. Like, I can just click the button and he doesn't get to talk anymore. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I actually even asked my boss, like, you're the one paying me. Like, is this a good investment of, the time and resources that we've got going on? And he gave me his blessing to use my judgment. And so I'm thinking about it, like, what do I want to continue this conversation? And if I do, why? And I just couldn't get out of my head, like, what if it was me? Like, what if that was me on the other side of this conversation? Would I not want me to keep trying to speak the truth? Like, but by the grace of God, I'm him. Like, the only reason I'm on this side of the conversation and not on that side of the conversation is that God has been extra gracious to me and given me the opportunity to know the truth and love him. I mean, you can't carry this to the nth degree because it's just not practical. But like, if I was him, I would beg me to keep sharing, right?
And if he really didn't want to hear it, he would just leave. But he keeps coming back, so it might be
Right.
for a reason,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's just generally true of the people around us as well. There are certainly those who have heard the gospel, rejected it, and hardened themselves and don't want to hear another word of it. But most people are looking for the exact same things that we're looking for. They're looking for identity. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for meaning. They're looking for a place to belong. They're looking for those things, and they've found it in a community that celebrates their sometimes bizarre sexuality or their culture. If I'm part of the frat and I go out and drink every Friday night, I know for sure that from 6 p.m. to 3 o'clock in the morning, I belong there, right? That's what they're looking for. And obviously, those things are going to fall short. There's only one place where you can find all that. But they're looking for the same things that we're looking for, but we found them in Christ, which is really the only place you can find those things. Yeah.
But I don't know what I was going to say.
That's okay.
I had a thought, and then I was like, bye. Yeah, I think a lot of times, like, it's easier for people to get involved in those communities too. I mean, being a Christian, you have to, a true Christian, this is what me and my friends have been like talking through a lot recently, is like, in a true Christian friendship, like, there has to be the piece where you call each other out too, there has to be the piece where you say that's not okay, like, then that's where the law comes in. But it's once someone already is like established in like the friendship and like the gospel is there, and we are all very sure of salvation and grace and whatnot. And I think you look at a lot of friendships of me and other, like, my friends from class, or I've observed that some of my friends were in frats and stuff, and observe their friendships with each other, and they're super shallow. Because again, like you were saying, yeah, I know we are gonna hang out from a certain time, and that fills up all my free time, because then I'm gonna sleep the rest and do my homework the rest of the time. But a lot of times we don't know anything deeper about each other. We just have a good time, and that doesn't really like give you the support you need. Even, college is hard. There's lots of insecurities and stresses and anxieties and hard life things happen at this time in your life, and then also like relationship things happen. Like, there's just a lot going on top of being broke and like, and I think a lot of times they do it just because it's easy. It's like, I don't need another hard thing in my life. And so, yeah, this friendship is easy. We just laugh and do stupid stuff together, and that's all it is. And then the friendships probably fall apart after college and stuff. But yeah, I've definitely found the value in like stronger friendships recently too, and it's all based in Christ, like in the shared faith. I'm always like, why are my friends always like good friends always Christian? I'm like, well, easy. Like we have the same beliefs and we can get on such a deeper level than if not. And I can be truly open and honest about everything and like know they're going to be on the same page or at least receptive of it.
Yeah. It's wonderful to have those friends. Have you found with your move to North Carolina, have you found that you are able to build the same depth of relationship in a new place like that?
I would say probably not quite. Yeah, chapel is a blessing where everyone here is the same age, and we all are in similar majors and stuff. So, like I said, it's easy to build friendships that way. But then you go into a new congregation, and it's not a huge congregation, so a lot of people aren't really my age. And there's a few, and I've grown close with people who aren't my age there as well, but we don't really like go to the beach together on a Saturday because there might be like 60 years old. But you can still have that, like, I still can have, like, feel my soul being filled through conversations with them. And a lot of my friends now out there are not Christian, but I'm like, and so that's why, like, it's made me reflect on this of like, yeah, we will never have this depth necessarily as if my friends who have been raised in the faith or have come to the faith. But then it is a really cool outreach opportunity too and stuff because I am never going to withhold anything, or if asked, I am going to be honest about everything. So yeah, it's like led to other conversations, and a lot of them are receptive to faith or grown up in the faith but aren't really active in it or don't really have a deep faith, and they've come to church a couple times and still don't really actively do it, but it's open doors. And I think there is a strong benefit in being friends with people who don't have the same level of faith as you. But back to what I was kind of saying before, like you do need those friends because your roots need to be strong and you need to have like the foundation. I don't think someone can just have none of that and then go out because it's very easy to be swept up in the world and have it overcome very easily.
Yeah. I think it's easier to be courageous about things also when you know you've got a foundation to kind of fall back on, right? Like, and well, I would say you've demonstrated a fair amount of courage also, like leaving WLC, coming here, which is something very uncomfortable. And then also then kind of leaving everything behind to go down to North Carolina. Again, it'd be easier and more comfortable to stay around or at least stay in a place that has some familiarity to it, right? And so forth. And it sounds like as much as you love it, hasn't necessarily been the easiest thing in the world. Yeah, I think it's easier to do. I guess I'm trying to say I appreciate you've got a courageous heart, and I appreciate that. Going down to North Carolina, how have you approached? I didn't prep you for this question, though, but how have you approached friendships, like new friendships, especially with people your own age? You mentioned there's not a lot of people your age in a congregation. I guess how do you discern who you're going to pursue those kind of friendships with? You've also mentioned that your faith plays a big role in your closest friendships. I guess, yeah. How do you determine who gets access to you, if that makes sense?
Who's worth my time?
Yeah, I'm trying not to ask it that way, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're exposed to every single person you meet down there is a new person because I literally knew nobody when I moved. So yeah, you do kind of have to filter and be like, are you someone who, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong saying worth my time because time is valuable, and I'm not gonna necessarily invest in someone who's gonna take me away from Christ, right, or tear me down. And there is like a filtering process that happens, and I think everyone should do it. I think it's important. I remember someone when I was going to high school, actually, he said to me, Ashley, remember, you choose your friends, they don't choose you. And that like always stuck with me because, and at the end of the day, that might mean that then you might not have any friends because then the people you choose might not choose you back. But I think that's better than having people who are dangerous. But yeah, how I've approached it is usually I'm a very active person. People who know me, they're like, Ashley can't sit still. Like I'm just a go person.
You've done great so far.
Yeah. And yeah, I just love doing things. I'm always like, people are like, oh, this is what I do in my free time. And I'm like, that sounds really fun. I should do that with you. And then I have to be like, Ashley, you do not need another hobby. That's been my new thing recently is you do not need another hobby. So, but that's kind of how I approach it. Is I find someone who does something that I do too. And I'm like, let's just do it together. And it's really easy to like go golfing with somebody. And if it was a terrible time, well, at least I got to go golfing, and I just don't want to go golfing with them again. But maybe over the course of the 18 holes, you find out that this person also likes to run and cook, and we both like the Carolina Hurricanes, so we might go watch a hockey game sometime, like, and so then you start to find those similar interests, and those are all kind of just like random things we do at the same time. But then like, or they might say like, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? Well, tomorrow's Sunday. I'm playing piano for church. And then almost everyone always asks me, oh, what church do you go to? And like, I mean, stuff like that. It just like can catapult, like snowball and keep going. But yeah, I think everyone's worth a shot. Everyone deserves a chance. And at the end of the day, they say some things that you're like, yeah, I don't like that. Then you don't need to keep pursuing it. But and yeah, I think also I like to have like real conversation with people. So if you're just going to tell me about how yesterday you went out till 2 a.m. and got drunk and jumped off a balcony onto a table or something, like, I'm like, cool. Like, have fun doing that tomorrow or two. Like, I don't need any part in that necessarily. Or just talk about the latest TikTok trend. Like, I don't know. A lot of times I look for more substance and value in conversation too. And so I'll still be friendly to the people, but I mean, like, I like to be people who I feel like are pouring into me, and I will pour into them as well.
Yeah. You create the culture around yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're the curator of your culture. If you want to have more in-depth conversations, I guess you got to find a way to get out of the small talk and get there.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have Christian people around you. One, I'd say you got to grow in your faith to the point where that becomes something attractive to the people around you that also have a strong faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think another big thing is curiosity, like being curious in other people and asking questions, like automatically leads deeper, so much easier. Just in like finding what people are passionate about, people want to talk about what they're passionate about. And like, that's just, and like, I want to know what you're passionate about, because I want to know what makes you excited and what you want to do in your free time, and like, why, like how you got to where you are today. I think, yeah. And sometimes that might lead you into asking questions that might be a little bit like touchy or harder for like a new person, but hey, at the end of the day, you're going to be a lot closer to that person, and you could be great friends by tomorrow, So yeah, I just like to know, like, I think curiosity is a big thing too, and like connection between individuals.
Yeah. Well, in that line, I appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on the show.
Yeah.
We didn't know each other before this, so
No.
thank you for taking that risk too,
Mhm.
and being here. Appreciate it for sure. Now, statistically speaking, young women are going to church less often than perhaps ever before in American history. For the first time in the history of the United States, young men are more likely to go to church than their fathers were. And young men are going to church at a higher rate than young women are. When I say going to church, I mean actively, like members that are actively involved. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's when you told me the statistic, I was like, that's funny, because I don't know if in my personal experience that's true necessarily. So I can't really speak to it from like personal experience, because I would say everyone my age at my church are women. I don't know if there's a single man my age who goes to my church, if I'm being honest. Chapel here, it was about 50, it was pretty, I would say, even. And yeah, so that's very interesting. That's also just my small church experience. But I was thinking about this, and I think my best guess would be a lot of women okay, well, first of all, the history of the church is very strong in the roles of men and women. And I think a lot of misconception has led women to be turned off, especially in a culture where feminism and pro women is so big. And I know I've like listened to a lot of like podcasts and stuff too about how it's like taking a big toll on men, because they're now being undervalued. And I think as a result of that, they are going to the place that gives them that value, which is the more conservative Christian space, which is great. So I think part of it probably is just the misconception of Christian roles, because yeah, everyone struggles with it because it's such a almost gray area. It's not like God does not lay everything out for us, right? Here is step 1 and 2 and 3, and it's not how it should be, because we're not all-knowing beings, so we're never going to understand everything. So there's part of it's just acceptance, but so I think everyone's curious about it because you can read it and you might not know how to interpret it, or might not know exactly what it means. And when you read it one way and you are curious about it, and you might ask it, and if someone kind of just gives you a super blanket sticker answer that's not super clear and might be a little bit more harsh, it can turn women off too, because marriage rates are lower, so a lot of women now are single and having to live their whole life fending for themselves, for lack of better terms. So they want to be represented well, and they have to represent themselves. And when they're told or hear, oh, in the church, like, more power goes to the men or whatever, they feel like, oh, that's not a place for me. So I think part of it is just not understanding the roles correctly, and how it's just that's the way God designed us to be. And I think if it's explained better, women would agree with it and understand it. So that might be part of it. I think maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but my way is like, just because leadership does not make you greater than. Like, every human is equal, right? And no role is greater than another one. It's just different. And I'm kind of like, why do you want to be something you're not, I guess? And roles are complementary. So a man can't be a great leader without people supporting him. And I think it's also when men might interpret leadership in the wrong way as power, when the greatest leader of all was Jesus, and by leading he was sacrificial. So if you are sacrificial in your role as a leader, you should be like, a woman should feel lifted up through that, right? And in turn respect you and care for you. And it's very symbiotic. That's like a very scientific thing.
Very plant word.
Yeah. But in my mind,
plant lady, it makes sense.
Yeah, and I always, whenever it was explained to me like that, I'm like, well, what's the issue? People have always shown me I'm valuable. I know that Jesus loves me and came for me just as much as my brothers and my father. Like, I don't need to be the one in charge, because I know the people in charge can't be their fullest without people supporting them, which is women and us. And I just see it as I don't know. So I think if it's explained in a good way that shows equal value, and also support there. Because like I was saying, now I know a big part of it in church is like, oh, the man is supposed to represent his wife and his family. But now with, I think, marriage rates and just like relationship rates declining, like, a lot of women feel like now they're not represented in the church as well. So finding a way to represent women so their needs are being met, and also just knowing they're valued, is a big thing.
Yeah. How do you make sure, in a church context, how would you make sure women know their value?
I think just having men ask them how they're doing and check in on a regular basis. And genuinely mean it, not a good morning, how are you? Like, actually, like, or asking what they think about something. Women's brains are just as intelligent as men's, and we have, again, different perspectives and can see things in different ways. And I think it comes down to a lot of like psychology too. I'm not no psychologist, but like, everyone, and it's not even just men and women, it's just people in general, everyone thinks in different ways, right? And so you just need to make sure people are being heard in different ways and hearing different perspectives. And I think a big thing is just being there and going back to like having deep, meaningful relationships and not being just superficial. And I think I was actually talking to my family about this recently. I was like, I know like elders in churches used to be a bigger thing. I think I don't hear about them as much anymore, but I feel like that was set up in a way to give women an opportunity to be heard and share their concerns with maybe more of like a designated person. But when that designated person goes away, it's like, well, now who do I go to? Or who's coming to me? And I don't know, I think there could just be people, and I think it's just like intentionality. Like people just need to feel heard. That sounds a little loosey goosey. I think a big part is just checking in, and I don't know if there's any like big change. It's just making sure you're checking in with women and stuff.
Do you feel heard at church or in your
Well,
Christian community?
I would say if people know me well, if you know me well, I do have a pretty strong personality. So, I wouldn't say I make myself known, but like if someone asks me my opinion, I'll tell you. And also it helps I am on the church staff, so like I feel seen and heard because I'm asked usually pretty recently or regularly. I don't know if that. Yeah, I think it would be more interesting because pretty much as soon as I moved there, I was like in this role. So I think it maybe would be different if I was not in this role of like regularly talking to pastor on a regular basis and being like checking in and just giving my input on how and like, oh, should we do this or not? Or like, that kind of thing. So I feel seen and heard, but I think it's my unique situation. Yeah. And I think, I mean, here at chapel, it's a little bit different because we weren't like active members of the congregation necessarily. We were active members of the church. And I mean, Pastor Billets did an awesome job of like just making us, I don't like curiosity is a big thing. He would just ask us like random questions that involved us or faith, or like, what do you think about this? Or like, I was thinking about this today when I was writing my sermon. Like, what do you think? And I think that's a big way of just being like, oh, I see your value and I see you're helping me in a way, And so I've always felt valued, but that's also I know my personality and I know that's just part of who I am.
Have you ever gotten a pushback for being bold?
No, but I've also attended fairly contemporary, I would say, churches, which I feel like, I don't know, it's just like more open to people just speaking their mind, I guess.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Good that you haven't had to deal with that. Yeah. I think, that's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear. Yeah.
And I know some of my friends most of my friends are married now, who have gone through like premarital counseling. And when the topic of roles comes up, that's usually when they're like, it's great, but I still have an issue with this. And I'm like, I just don't know if you're fully understanding it. So like, I know some of people my age definitely do still have those issues and whatnot, but I just don't know if they're like fully, they're just reading the words for what they are and not fully understanding what that actually means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way it's been described, I think that I appreciate the most, I guess, is the concept of orders of creation. Like there's an order to everything. Like in all of nature, there's an order to everything. In society, there's an order to everything. It only makes sense that there would be an order to these relationships as well. Yeah. Also, the recognition that if Christ is the model for Christian husbands and the model gave of himself, like there's only one thing in the universe that is beyond value, that is so valuable that it's invaluable, and it's God. He is the one thing that exists outside of time and eternity, and then also therefore value. And that is what he was willing to sacrifice for me. That's my model for this relationship. If I understand that, obviously no man is perfect, right? Every man's going to make a mistake. But if a husband is understanding that that is his role with regard to his wife, maybe I'm speaking too boldly, but I have a hard time imagining that that's a difficult man. I don't want to be too bold either, but that would be a difficult man to love in return.
Oh, yeah. I think the issue is that most men don't act that way necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. How about as a single woman? Do you think that your voice is more heard or less heard because you're a single woman?
Like in the church or just
In
in
general,
general?
both, I guess.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if either way would really make a difference. Again, I think a big part of it is just personality. Like, I'm very independent, just like that's just the way I am. And I think either way, I'd probably make my voice heard. But like, also if it was like, okay, me, or like as long as like, I would never let someone speak for me necessarily, put words in my mouth. That's what I'm saying. You can speak for me if you are speaking what my opinion is. So I think either way, I would feel my voice was being heard, but I don't know. I haven't really thought too deeply on like
Yeah.
that concept.
Yeah. Okay. And this also was not something I prepped you for at all. So feel free to refuse to answer if you feel like. So you mentioned that there's really not any like single guys at your church.
Mhm.
So what does dating look like then for a woman like you who's very much involved in her church, loves her Savior, and very much is looking for that kind of a relationship,
Mhm.
but then doesn't necessarily have a lot of options at church? What's that look like then?
I think it's partly just kind of being okay with being single, which again, I'm very independent, so I kind of am. And like but also just like trusting that God is like, if God's plan is for me to get married, then I know that I will find that person eventually. And you could meet the most perfect person who's a God-loving man, Christian at the grocery store. You could meet them anywhere. Like the craziest thing, I will speak for my parents. They met at a bar and they had the exact same values. And to me, that like blows my mind because I would never in a million years be like, I'm going to this bar tonight, I'm gonna find my husband, like never. And like it was literally just like, so you never know who's going to be put in front of you. And it was as simple as my dad getting my mom's number, and then they just learned everything about each other. And it was, yeah. So like, it can literally happen anywhere. You don't have to find your spouse at church. Um, it's way easier because you already know what they believe. So I think a big part of it is just trusting that if this is what God wants for me, He's gonna put them wherever we meet each other. But then it's also just giving everyone else the benefit of the doubt outside of church too, but then also it's being upfront and honest right away in early stages of talking to somebody or anything. It's like, all right, this is what I believe in, this is important. And if they don't, then I'm like, all right, well, that's important to me. And I just am not going to go there with somebody who's not.
Yeah.
'Cause some people are okay with like dating evangelism, but
Convert and convert.
yeah, well, I've never heard that one before. That's funny. That's just like not like how I would want it to be necessarily.
It hasn't worked for me. I'll
Okay,
tell you
dang.
that. Yeah. It hasn't worked for me.
I think especially as women with the whole leadership kind of mantra, like especially in a faith focused relationship, like I don't want to be the one who's like, okay, we should pray now, or hey, you want to like do this devotion together now, like because then that's going to reflect on your kids someday too. So I think it's very important to me to like have that faithful leader, and I think would come with someone who already has a strong faith.
What you desire is a good and godly thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think personally, also, it's been being okay with so I've never been promised a spouse. He says it's a good thing. Like the Lord says it's a good thing. He says if you're burning, you should get married. And frankly, probably would be wise for me to get
Yeah.
married. But I'm also not promised that, right? And so there's a difference between the Lord stating that these things are blessings and even the strong desire to have that blessing for myself and to experience that, but then also recognizing I haven't necessarily been promised this and being okay with, I don't see, consequences sounds negative. It's not all negative, but being okay with the consequences of saying, all right, I would rather be alone than with a bad fit, right? Or maybe a less than desirable fit. And I have friends that have chosen to sacrifice that, and the Lord is blessing their marriages, and they, they're getting what they asked for, I guess, and you can take that however you want. But for me, it's just not worth the sacrifice, right? Of being with, like, I just haven't had somebody at the right time where it was going to work, where it was like, I actually would like to spend, like, I would like to be your lifelong companion, right? And like I said, that's something you got to kind of decide to what degree are you okay with that. And if you're really, really not, then, I mean, frankly, maybe your standards or your expectations need to be adjusted. I don't hate being single, actually. I love the freedom that I have. I just came back from Montana. I just went to Montana for 10 days just for the heck of it, right? I love having that freedom. I love being able to just do what I want to do when I want to do it. I don't have to explain to anybody why I'm spending the money I am and how I'm doing it. I don't have to, like, all of that. At the same time, boy, would I give it up in a minute to have a family and so forth, right? But you got to recognize that there are positive and negative consequences to every decision that you make. And this is a you decision. The Lord hasn't promised that he's going to give you a spouse. So we'll see what the Lord does.
Yeah, I am in the same boat. I'm always like, oh, it'd be really nice. Like all my friends most of them are married now. A lot of them are trying to have kids. And I'm like, oh man, it'd be nice to have like a family and kids. And then I'm like, but then to do that, that means I'd be giving up this and this and this and this. I'm like, actually, do you actually want like currently in this moment, you know? And then even on like a deeper level, like I said, I can't sit still. I have to fill every minute of every day. And that's come now with having 2 jobs and then on top of that volunteering at church, being in a life group. I'm super social. I run like half marathons, so that's a lot of time running or just going to the gym. I'm in a basketball league, like all this stuff I love to do. And I'm like, something would have to give because, well, one, marriage is pretty much just a giant sacrifice. That sounds very negative, and that's not what I mean. But to make a marriage successful, it's about sacrificing, right? And it's about putting the other person before yourself. So you can't always do what you want to do, and or even things that you need to do necessarily. And I'm like, I maybe couldn't be in this worship coordinator position if I were in a relationship or have kids. Because if I'm being honest, my landscape architecture job is very demanding, actually. So all my free time then kind of goes to my other job, and I just wouldn't be able to do, I think, all of it at the same time. And so I'm like, this is currently, I think, where God needs me to be, is in this position, and maybe one day that'll change, but for now I'm very okay with just being where I am.
One of the tests for me also is often like, am I willing to sacrifice these things in order to be with this person, right? And sometimes that's just, it's gonna make me sound bad, but sometimes it's as simple as like, I'm getting ready for a date and I'm just not excited about it. Like, there's other things I'd rather be doing. That's a sign. That's a sign, right? I still might give them a chance, but like, that's a sign that maybe this isn't gonna be the I mean, and frankly, I wouldn't want somebody who isn't really excited about. I don't want to be somebody that's not excited about being with Charlie. I'm not always excited about being with Charlie, but like, I would hope that they would most of the time, at least. Also, it just, I think that's a voice that also needs to be heard. Single people need to be seen. I'm not sure that we are. And there's always like, there's something wrong with us if we're not, like, we got to fix him or solve him or whatever. That's just what I hear. I seem to hear that quite a bit.
Oh, like part of life, or you've made it in life once you've gotten here. But they always say, single people are the strongest workers in God's kingdom because they have the time to help advance the kingdom. And like Paul was single and he said it was a blessing, right? And he thought everyone should be like him unless they were burning and needed to get married and whatnot. And so I think that's just been a good reminder of, not in this phase of my life, maybe forever, but like, how much can I do and take advantage of it?
And it's okay to have the two things going on at the same time. Like, Lord, I do want this, and in your time, like, come on, let's just do this already. And then on the other side, saying, I love this. I love the life that I live. So
I think it's a good sign too if you're very content with yourself and being alone. I think people always say that's like the first step then to finding a relationship is you're so comfortable and content in who you are that
That's what they say.
that's what they say. And you might be there and you're like, well, it's not working. So maybe that means you're not
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do find it. I also was surprised, just like you were, about the statistic with young men and young women. I had first heard that statistic a few months ago and kind of doubted it and looked into it. It turns out to be accurate.
Okay.
And I think it is also more true. I think those numbers probably reflect like the maybe not always Christian demographic, you know? I'm not saying like people that were unchurched and are becoming churched, but I think that's probably driven in major ways. Like we're in Wisconsin, you're down in the Bible Belt. Like in those places, I'm not sure the demographics are changing much because the Christian church is such an ingrained part of those two societies. I wonder to what degree that's true, like in the West, where Christianity never really had a super strong foothold and things like
Okay.
that. I do wonder how much that's true. I guess what I want to ask your opinion on, and obviously these are opinions. We're not going to solve all the world's problems today. But what unique, maybe temptations or distractions are young women facing, or what's going on in the world that young women in increasing numbers don't seem to value what they find in the Christian church?
I think it's a little bit on what I touched on earlier about like what society tells you your value is. They really tell you they really hype women up and you're so strong and you're not only equal to men, but you're like better than men type of a thing. And I think when women hear that, it feels good to hear it, But they don't really look for true everlasting value necessarily because they're getting that validation all the time. And I think a big part of it too is I've noticed this a lot with like trends and people our age is that they feel like they're like owed something. They feel like they're owed a job and owed this and that nothing should ever be hard. And I think, which is totally not true. And my like the way I roll is like you have to work hard for everything.
And I want to.
Yeah.
I want to earn my opportunities. I don't want anybody to give me anything.
And I think so that's part of it. It's just like when you're getting that validation out elsewhere, you don't like no one like they say you pray the most when you're in the low spot. You don't pray when you're on the top of the earth. And I think when women kind of feel like they're on top of the earth because all their friends and culture and jobs and schools are telling them that they're so powerful and they can do everything, like you don't really feel like you need a savior almost, And I'm like, why would I need that? I'm already everything I need to be. Which obviously life happens and you aren't always going to feel that way no matter how many times people say it to you. I just think that that could be it maybe. It's not really how I think, but so it's just a
Right.
speculation.
How do we combat that?
I think but maybe the only other thing that's more powerful than someone telling you that you can do everything is someone telling you how much you're loved. Because that's something that even when you feel down is still going to carry weight. And even when you're feeling great, you still want to be loved. And so I think it's just really emphasizing and putting at like how strong God's love is. It's something that's going to cheer you on and also lift you up. And it's a constant. I think that could be part of it. But I think a big part is just, showing the gospel and God's love and just hoping the Spirit can work through it.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is just off the top of my head, but like there's that whole idea of like you're a queen, right? So forth. And there's something implicit in you that makes you valuable. Like how powerful then is the message that each and every one of us is a child of the King, right? We're talking about women, so that each one of the women I'm dealing with is a daughter of the King, right? And there are implications to that too. One, you are subject to the King, but it's actually a greater value in a greater kingdom than anything you can construct for yourself here. Like you can be the most beautiful and most powerful woman on the face of the earth. You got nothing when you stand before the face of when you stand before the king. Would you not want to be considered his beloved? Like in some ways, it's almost even better. It's better to be a daughter of the king than it is to be the bride of the king, right?
I mean, you know how like a father will protect his daughter.
Yeah, yeah,
The value you feel and the love you feel in that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe that's something we need to lean on.
hmm
Interesting. I'm just curious. This is like just a purely like what do you observe question. Talk to me about the guys you see in the church. What do you think specifically young men? What do you think the condition of young men in the church is? This is a really broad and probably unfair question, but what comes to mind?
I think I don't know. Can you give me a
Yeah.
little more?
Are they what they ought to be? Are they
Mm.
like, specifically young men too? I think the older men who've stuck to church have had it's sticky, right? Like the word has an impact over years and generations. This is it calls to mind because last Christmas happened to be at my folks and went to the local coffee shop, and I just happened to end up sharing a table with it was a young woman and a young man, and she was there like dressed very stylishly and so forth, right, by herself. And then he showed up, and it was clearly like, there was a I'm in town group chat somewhere, and they connected, right? So they weren't like a couple or anything like that. And turns out they were Christians. And I just listened for 45 minutes while he tried to use the fact that they were both Christian as like his launch, like as a device for flirting, I guess. And just one, failing miserably. Two, like she was clearly more mature in her faith than he was.
Okay.
And yeah, he was still trying to use it. So I guess that's the worst end, right? And then the proper end, we would say, are like these guys coming out of the church are just like spectacular young men.
hmm
If I'd follow them anywhere, if you're going to put them on just generally speak, again, this is a totally unfair question. Where do you think young guys today, at this moment, at least in our circles, where do you think guys fall on that spectrum?
I think the ones I've interacted with who are like currently in church, I would say maybe like 0 is like the worst end and 10 is like around like 6 or 7, I'd say. Like their faith is there, their belief is there, but like the Christian life part of it is like they might not have the guidance or they just might not know where to go with it, like the direction they need. Yeah, I think a big part of it is just like having the heart, like they don't know how to have the hard conversations and like talk things through to get through temptations and stuff. Because if you are a man my age in church, you've already overcome a lot more probably like temptation and hardship than women have. I think that's why I was surprised with that statistic, because usually it was, oh, men have a lot more distractions out there. So this is so that's why like they might not be in church as much because they can find like desires and fulfillments elsewhere. But then okay, I'm in church now, I believe what I believe, but like how are you going to then use that to kind of like live a godly life and honor God in that way? And I think that might be the piece that's kind of missing. And I think it's just because maybe there wasn't great examples. People, and I like you don't want to hear your dad tell you what to do when you're like a 20-year-old man. So I think like mentorship is a huge thing that I just have never really seen in our like circles. Like 20-year-olds, low 30s, like mentoring college students and young professionals and just being like, I just went through this phase of life and I'm still kind of cool in a way. And like, this is like, and it's more recent too. So like, they would rather listen to you and just like being able to like, or have someone like, hey, I'm struggling with this. How do I go about this situation or struggle or temptation or whatever? I think that like deeper piece of like church community might just be missing to like help them level up.
Yeah, level up. Do you think women generally are more likely to have those kinds of connections?
I think women are just more emotional and deep in their friendships. Like they're gonna, well, women are just like gabbers in general. I mean, generally speaking, they're gonna like just talk a lot more, and when they hang out, it's gonna be over coffee just to chat and talk about what's been great and what's been bad, and they're gonna cry together and laugh together. Where again, I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of time when guys hang out, it's just like we're just broing it up and like watching sports and shooting hoops. And not all guys are into sports or playing video games or like whatever. Like, and I'm not saying guys are superficial; they're just like naturally not emotional, and they are also more of a. And this is not really a bad thing, but like a prideful, like they have pride and they want to be respected, so they don't want to show weakness. And again, it's not really a bad thing, but if you let it get the best of you, then it can be. And I think it's just harder for them in their nature to talk about the things, where I think for women it's just in our nature, it's easier. And so again, it's just a difference between the way God made us, and there's nothing wrong with either one. But if you're aware of it and then you talk and can talk through it and get there, I think that's kind of where it needs to happen. But it's not like I'm a lot more willing to open up if someone opens up to me first. So I think the older generations need to open up about their younger experiences first to kind of help young men understand how to work through things, and then maybe apply their faith to their lives.
Yeah. You hear that? You have permission to be in our lives as young Christians. Yeah, I yearn for that. I yearn for that. Like you hit the nail on the head. If there's one thing I could just like put my finger on for me personally, I think would have made a difference when I was younger, and that I still just crave. And it is that deep connection with older men. Like just help guide me. Like I've never lived life before. I've never been 32 years old before. Help me. I'm figuring it out. Yeah, I yearn for that. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about sexuality. Obviously, we recognize the biblical model. And frankly, within Christian communities, it seems to be generally pretty easy to at least walk the heterosexual line. But even with media and so forth, even like sexual activity outside of marriage has very much permeated the church also. I'm curious, just speaking from this is your perspective and not anybody else's. Just speaking from your experience, what's it like being, again, a young single woman in the dating world, in a Christian environment? You've expressed that you would far prefer to date Christian men. Let's talk about your experience, maybe how we doing, just from your perspective. What do you think?
I think just you kind of said it, like it's just a norm now, and even it's permeated the church community, whatever. And so it is kind of just like an expectation. And so I wouldn't say like dating Christian is a cop out, but it makes it easier because then you don't necessarily have to have the conversation or like feel like the judgment or whatnot. I think I mean, it's with any sin really, like you can convince yourself it's okay just this one time, or oh, it's okay because we are going to get married, so it's going to happen eventually, or I gotta, what do they say, test ride the car. Like you can convince yourself of any reason why it's okay and to do it. And I think with like sex before marriage, it's hard because it is in human nature. Like it is like a natural thing that just is a desire and happens. And so sometimes people can, with all their power and desire and mental strength and prayer, try not to. And like, I mean, that's why they say you need to take precaution, but it can like still happen. Like hopefully in a situation like that, you'd be repentant and can like figure it out and put boundaries in place for it not to happen again. But I think it is such a norm in society now that people see it everywhere, and it can be something that you can become numb to pretty easily. And I mean, once it happens once, it's like, oh, what's another time? What's 4 times? What's every day? You're like, whatever. Like, it's just like, it's in this, I mean, it's with any sin. Like, I mean, a lot of Christians drinking has permeated the church too. It's, oh, well, where really is the limit? What's fun to, I enjoyed it to, oh, maybe I'm a little tipsy to, like, where's the line, And I like, people, whenever that discussion comes up, it's kind of like, well, if you have to think about it, then you probably just shouldn't go there. If you have to really think about how far can I go, you've already gone too far. And I think it's again, it's like a very natural human desire. So I think and it's a hard thing, especially when you love somebody and it's in a relationship. So like the best thing you can really do is just pray about it and hope the spirit gives you enough power to withstand. But again, it's gonna be way easier when both people are on the same page in the dating sense. You can, when there's two people actively not trying to, it's going to be a lot easier to honor God in that way than if one person's like, well, I'm just doing it for you, which I think is a big part of why I'm like a strong proponent for Christian dating and not flirt to convert. It's my new favorite term. Yeah, and yeah, it's definitely a hard thing. And again, it's probably been this prevalent forever, like as something that is so natural. But I think it makes it worse with like media, and it's permeated every song now, every show, every movie, any like modeling or imaging or like literally any advertising. It's everywhere. And it's an expectation. And I think, but now people, when they like, if they're like, oh, you don't do that, then it's almost like respect. So I think it used to be more of like a derogatory thing. And I think now it like, or like, cause like, then even I've noticed that with like drinking too. If like, you're like, oh, I don't drink, it's more of like oh, come on, just do it. It's more of like oh, wow. Okay. Like good for you. Like respect, but it's more respect because they're like, wow, that's powerful that you can withhold from that. It's not necessarily like respect because you're doing it because it's right.
Yeah. I mean, personal experience, it's just like basically that, like, oh, yeah, respect. Not for me, though. Right. Yeah, which is, it used to be really disappointing, but the more I think about it, the less disappointing it is. Like, well, I mean, it's probably going to end up there anyway if that's your attitude towards all of this. Right. Yeah. And this is probably crossing a line, but how how are you looking for a guy who's a virgin?
I wouldn't say so. I think because, like I said, everyone can make mistakes, and I do not judge your past. A lot of my friends in high school, I'm always like saying now, where I see them now, I'm so impressed because I knew them in high school. And I'm like, to me, that is so much more impressive than someone who's just withheld from different actions or issues their entire life. I'm like, if you've never gone there and you don't know what it's like then to me it's like, okay, great, you like withheld or whatever. But if it's like, no, I went there and I realized it was wrong and I repented and I like restarted or whatever, then I'm like, okay, to me that is a lot more impressive and like shows you are truly like trying to honor God with your actions in that way. So I think the mentality would have to be like, oh, I'm a virgin, or like that's what I'm trying to do. But it wouldn't have to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So to a degree, also, there's trusting that the gospel's at work in somebody's heart. Like when we're talking about actively living in sin, that's a different conversation than someone who's a repentant sinner, right? And has adjusted a lifestyle. And I say that we are told in no uncertain terms that the gospel does heal, and the gospel does, you know, restore and so forth. And these things, to a certain degree, like you're moving back your starting place, right? If that makes sense.
Mhm.
But also at the same time, these are not things that cannot be overcome with love, both the love of the Father and our love for people to each other. Um, yeah, that's a conversation I think we need to have more often as young people too, and within the church also. That we do a pretty good job of condemning sexual activity. We don't always do a great job of the healing afterwards and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. And that leads into a whole different conversation that we don't need to go into. But I think the evangelical world has painted all kinds of pictures of what like the consequences of sexual activity
Mhm.
are that aren't always inaccurate, but they're often not helpful. So yeah, the whole like damaged goods idea
Oh.
is just not a biblical idea. It's not. There's
Yeah,
grace and
forgiveness
forgiveness
is
for
literally
everybody.
wiping it clean, you
Yep.
know?
Yep. Doesn't mean there aren't consequences, but it does wipe things clean.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to talk about plants.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So first, why landscape architecture and design? What drew you here? It's a cool combination of like an appreciation for God's creation with like art and design and things like, to a certain degree, I would estimate math and things like that
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool convergence. There's not a lot of people doing this. How did you end up here?
Well, first of all, I'll give a little plug for landscape architecture because a lot of people don't know what it is. The amount of times I've gotten asked, like, why'd you get a 4-year degree to mow people's yards? And I'm like, so this is for everyone out there. That is not what we do. Yeah, we kind of talked about it briefly earlier, but pretty much the best way I describe it is I can design anything that is not a building. So that will be anything from plants, but it can be hardscape, it can be to a degree structural. We can do walls up to a certain height. And pools, outdoor kitchens. Some people, if you're lucky enough, can do zoos, golf courses. Again, those all have plants in them in some way, but I mean, mostly what I work with on a daily basis is hardscape, fences, paver patios. I even did some work with like electrical stuff. I don't think I was qualified for that, but I learned a ton. I like drew in some electrical wiring and stuff. And so, but I will say the thing that got me into it was plants. Growing up, my classic Wisconsin family, farmer backgrounds, gardening is just a way of life. Everyone has a garden. And my parents always just were both into like landscaping their yard in general. And both my grandparents were too. Like my grandpa, my mom's dad, had like a rose garden with a heart-shaped hedge around it, and he loved flowers, azaleas, not to mention like a 1/4 acre.
It was romantic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, tons of blueberry bushes. So like very much like the gardening production side of plants, but then also the design and landscape of it all. And then yeah, my dad's side also had farming background and just always liked to landscape and take care of the yard. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I remember, I think I was a junior in high school. I checked out a book from the library on garden design. And I was like reading it, looking at the pictures, and my aunt was like, oh, like, have you ever thought if you could see if there's like a job in that maybe? It never crossed my mind. And I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool. Also, growing up, I loved Martha Stewart. And so Martha Stewart like was big into gardening. And I would always joke, like, I want to be Martha Stewart when I grew up, just gardening, like cooking and baking and like decorating. Like that sounds awesome.
Consider trading.
Yes, not that far. Being best friends with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. Dude, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And so I looked into it and found landscape architecture, and it's kind of like, what is that? And then my mom actually brought me to the University of Wisconsin to tour the program. And that's when I was exposed to all the pieces of it that I kind of just explained that no one really knows about. And it kind of scared me. I was like, I just like plants. I don't want to learn about, and a lot of another piece I kind of left out is we do a lot with like ecology and natural systems and large scale planning. And those were the big pieces that I was not really interested in, but it's a lot of what curriculum and schooling focuses on. And I was like, I don't really care long term how to make this plan and system and for how bees are gonna become repopulated in this area in the next 15 years. I was like, I just like plants. Like I love bees because that's what makes plants live and pollinate and fruit grow. But I was like, I don't know if that's what I want to do my whole life. But that was kind of what I was exposed to on this visit. So that's when I went to Wisconsin Lutheran College instead. I went and decided. I played basketball there and had a saxophone scholarship there. So I was like, oh, like extracurriculars, I'm coming out of high school. It's still a very important part of my life and it's fun. And then somehow I came across a guy who was a landscape architect and I shadowed him for a day. And he gave me a more real life look into what a job would look like and what he actually learned in school and all this stuff. So that's when I went back and decided to transfer and go into the program. So really, I kind of gave a brief rundown on everything you could design, and really you can focus on any of those areas, and it's a really broad job, and you can really go anywhere you want with it. It is a heavily like profession. You have to be like licensed to call yourself a landscape architect, which is very interesting. I'm not a landscape architect actually. I am not licensed yet. You have to pass a bunch of exams and like have work experience to be one. So then I can't like stamp and seal plans. Like we have construction documents, and we are very similar to like civil engineers and architects, very similar to all those different development type professions. And yes, you touched on a part that I really like, that it's partly creative and partly like systems and math and science. I always did art classes growing up. I was never like great at art, but I liked it and I could get across what I was trying to show and put out there and communicate. And that's a big part I like about landscape architecture. When we do our renderings and our sketches and our drawings, it's all about visual communication. Like, how can your client understand what you're trying to say through this? It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. I'm not hanging this thing on my wall. It's a rough sketch of like, this is what it would look like. Do you like this? So that's kind of like the art part of it. There's a lot more of like design principles that go into it and all this kind of stuff. And then there's the science side, which is a lot of ecology and systems, and is this environment going to work here? But then there is also, if we're designing places for people, it's a lot of like psychology. Like, is a person going to want to hang out in the space? What makes someone move through a space or linger someone or feel comfortable in this space we're creating for them? And that's more of what really drew me into it. Is I love the outdoors. I think God designed humans to be primarily outdoors. Circadian rhythm is so heavily influenced by exposure to sunlight. We get vitamins from being outside. There are a lot of like anti I'm really bad with scientific terms. Anti-cancer, anti-carcinogenic, whatever.
Say it confidently. They'll
Oh
believe you.
yeah. Like, so there's a book I love called The Nature Fix, and it goes through all five senses of a human and how all the natural pieces and being exposed to all of them outside influence your health so much. Like pine trees emit some chemical thing that is very anti-carcinogenic. So a literal walk in the woods can like benefit your health so much just by smelling the scent of pine, essentially. So I was like, there was so much benefit to people being outside, but everyone spends all their time inside. How do I get people to go outside? And so that was a big part. I was like, I want to design spaces that make people comfortable being outside. Because a lot of times my friends would be like, oh, I don't want to go outside. It's too hot, or there's like too many bugs. And I'd be like, so what? Like, you're breathing the fresh air, the sun shines on your skin. Like, what more could you want? So it'd be like, okay, well, how can I create a space that's shaded and like rejects mosquitoes, or like at least, deters them, and makes someone want to, like, I don't know, just have an evening relaxing on their patio, reading a book, surrounded by the scent of pine and the sound of a water feature maybe, and just like truly relax and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I got into it. I've learned so much more about it, obviously, since being in it and getting my degree in landscape architecture. But a big part is just like, I think God created us to be outside, and I want people to go outside.
It's interesting that you're in an industry that's all about, like, obviously it's a business, right? And it's also all about curating things.
Mhm,
And like you said, you joking about your love for plants and all that. But really, when I'm listening to you talk, it's all about people.
mhm,
It's all about your love for people and creating spaces for them. That's cool. I
mhm.
like that.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, like, I think that's what pains me a little bit about my job is I have an office job. I'm in front of a computer designing spaces all day. And a lot of it is like not even designing, it's just taking the designs that don't take that long and drafting it and making everything exact and constructible into certain standards, and zoning and being approved by the city is what's slow and takes all the time. And so most of
Government being inefficient.
my what? Not telling you the information you need until after the fact. And so it does pain me a lot to be like, oh, I spend all my time in front of a screen when all I want to be doing is like interacting with people and helping people. And I mean, but then again, I'm like, okay, well, your coworkers are people and you can be influencing these people on a daily basis, but then still continue to, I mean, God gave me this job, so I can do what I have to the best of my ability, and influence as well as I can to what's available to me. And yeah, and also I do really love plants.
When you are outside yourself, what do you like to do?
Literally anything. I love being in the dirt gardening. Like I am back from North Carolina. I was gardening at my parents' house a couple days ago. I love flowers. Dahlias, incredible. One of the most like mystifying, beautiful creations ever. Sometime everyone listening, just Google a dahlia and just scroll for like 5 minutes. There's so many different types of dahlias. It's insane. Any color, pattern, form, shape. It's incredible. And so I was planting some dahlias for my mom in the garden, and my hands were just like caked with dirt. And I was like, can you please take a photo of this? And she was like, why? And I was like, I just haven't had dirt on my hands in so long, and it just is, I just feel so connected and like rooted right now. There's nothing like some good quality dirt. It's just, yeah, being outside in the sun and just like breathing it in. Yeah, I feel like it's very healing too. And so, yeah, love gardening. And it's also a very rewarding thing. You literally get the fruits of your labor. So that's awesome. I'm a big hiker, love hiking. And probably stemming off of hiking, now I've become a runner. Also probably just because I grew up playing sports, I was like, I need to continue this outlet somewhere. So yeah, hiking, love it, backpacking, camping, anything that I'm just like, as soon as I get in the woods and I set up, I'm like, oh, like I have no phone service. Everything just smells so crisp and fresh, and love that. And I love going to the beach. I will literally beach bum, just soaking up the sun, looking for seashells. I don't know really anything outside. I literally want, like, I love laying in like grass, like in lawns. Like I remember in college here at Madison, outside of Agricultural Hall, where all my studio classes were, there was like this hill, Observatory Hill. If anyone went to Madison, they know what that is. And it's just a lawn, grass hill. And I would just go and I would like nap on that. I would just go out there. I'm like, I don't care who sees me. I'm exhausted, and this hill is so nice. Or the grass and the sun. Growing up, loved to like play in the trees, just climb on rocks, you know. I just like being outside, going for a walk, anything.
Yeah. Yeah. This is perhaps an odd thing to say. I'm not sure I know how to do the beach right.
Okay.
If I'm going to go down to South Carolina, I got to figure out how to do the beach right, I think.
I think part of it may be skin tone.
Yeah. What are you trying to say?
You're the
What
one
are
who
you
said you're
trying
pale.
to say? What are you trying to say?
No, I've just been blessed with the olive skin that this allows me to go to the beach without any consequences usually.
That's why I have a hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the big thing at the beaches is you have to get one of the like tents type things, and then you can hang out there all day. You get too hot, I even do it. I'll just like go under the tent. It's better than the umbrella. Umbrellas are last year's news.
No
Yeah.
umbrellas. All right, fair enough.
It's too windy. They just fly away.
Okay, so a tent.
Yeah.
All right.
Or I think they're called like shamus or something. They're like only attached on one side, and then they like flutter like a kite, kind of.
Oh, I've seen
So
that.
the shade kind of moves with it wherever the wind goes, I guess.
It gives you an opportunity to move throughout the day then also.
Mhm.
Yeah, get your
But I think the point of it is that it's never gonna catch the wind and blow out.
interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. How would you say your understanding of creation has shifted and changed since you began, or maybe God's creative work, since you began studying landscape design?
Architecture.
Landscape architecture. Okay, landscape architecture. Yeah, how would you say, has it? And if it has, how so?
Well, so as a designer, everything I do and everything and now I see everything I see is through the lens of like a designer, because I understand everything was done with a purpose, right? So literally even people will say it's a curse of a designer, because you'll be like walking through a parking lot and you'll like know why they put certain things in a parking lot. It's like the lamest thing ever. And
Yeah.
then you'll see something messed up and it'll drive you crazy.
Funny.
And it's like something no one else would notice, but instead now I'm cursed with noticing it. But on the positive side, I understand everything is super intentional and everything has been thought through and with a purpose. And you start to see that then in creation, that this was designed in this way. Like this is something that has a purpose and was intentional. My favorite thing to talk about is so one of my family's favorite vacation spots is Sanibel Island in Florida, and I think it was fall of 22. Hurricane Ian came through and just demolished like Southwest Florida. And unfortunately, Sanibel was like directly in the path of that, and completely wiped out. Like it was like this lush island. It was like leveled, and we went 2 years later, and the only vegetation that was like looked normal was the palm trees. And it was like the most bizarre thing ever because you were normally seeing this like green thing with vines everywhere and flowers and like hibiscus popping. And literally, you would look across the island, you would just see sand and roads and buildings and then palm trees just everywhere. I was like, this looks kind of funny, but then it's because palm trees were designed to withstand the winds of hurricanes. That's the importance of native species being planted where God placed them because they were designed to withstand that environment. And so palm trees are so flexible. They're not actually wood. They're like more fibrous, I guess. They're technically a grass, I think. Don't quote me on that. But they're like their actual like botanical classification is not a tree, I don't think. And so with the high speeds of the wind, they will pop down and then they'll just pop right back up. And I'm like, that was designed in that way. Like God knew hurricanes were going to come through. Beaches are windy spots. And the same thing with like the way the leaves are like serrated in a way. I don't know. Fringed. That's a better term, fringed. Like the wind will pass through it. It won't catch the leaf like a kite and like blow it. It'll just kind of flutter through it and stuff. And so I'm like, these species were designed to be in certain areas to withstand their environments. And yes, plants can adapt as things change and whatnot. Like the world is in like a alive thing. It like humans, we adapt to our environment. Like things can change and grow over time to better withstand something. But for the most part, like it was designed to be there. And like seeing the world through that as like everything was here on purpose and intentional and nothing a human could ever think up, is super cool. And I'm like grateful to see God as like a designer now through that and creator. But like creator, like I don't know, designer just is like cooler to me term. And yeah, also like we see like the earth through systems now that like everything relies on each other too. It's not like okay, a palm tree can hold its own, but like there's so many different things that rely on each other to keep the world moving, and it was all planned out ahead of time and put in place. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So maybe even at our best, all we're doing is trying to imitate what the Lord did before we got here.
Oh yeah. And I think people have gotten so far away from like just natural living and all that kind of stuff that I think I've seen a lot of trends recently of people like going back. Like a big example is like people like trying to like eat more naturally, I guess. Like there's a big emphasis these
like
days
Liver King
of like whole foods, like people only eating fruits and veggies and sourdough bread because all the ingredients are is salt, flour, and water, and there's no man-made chemical additives, and like people are feeling a lot better and because they don't have these fake things in them. And I'm like, God gave us everything we needed naturally. He gave us the sunshine and water and food and each other and like his word, and like that's all we need. Like yeah, humans can make different things, but it's never going to be better than what he already gave us. I actually am.
You are? You got your own sourdough starter? Should have known. Should have guessed.
Oh yeah. No, I've gone down a really deep rabbit hole of like natural things.
There we go. Awesome. Well, Ashley, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being bold enough to answer some questions that
Oh
were
yeah, of
kind of
course.
deep down in there. So I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for letting your voice be heard. That's awesome. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to support the work that we're doing here at Gird Up, www.girdupministries.com. I'll put a link down in the show notes below, as well as any links that Ashley wants to provide. Thank you to everybody that supports the work that we do. Thank you again to Ashley for your time. Blessings on the weddings and your travel back and things like that as you go home again. And to all of you, God bless you. We love you all, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, of course. That was fun.